Chapter 41. And it came to pass, at the end of 2 full years, that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, well-favored and fat-fleshed, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke, and he slept and dreamed a second time, and, behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. And behold, 7 ears thin and blasted with the east wind sprang up after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 rank and full ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream. But there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spoke the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I make mention of my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in the ward of the house of the captain of the guard, me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was with us there a young man, a Hebrew, a servant of the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. I was restored unto mine office, and he was hanged. And then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself, and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. I have heard say of you, that when you hearest a dream, you can interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Pharaoh spoke unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the brink of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored, and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them. But they were still ill-favored as the beginning. So I awoke. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up upon one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered. Then thin and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it unto me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, The dream of the Pharaoh is one. What God is about to do, he hath declared unto Pharaoh. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 lean and ill-favored kine that came up after their 7 years, and also the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind, they shall be 7 years of famine. That is the thing which I spoke unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he has shown unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine which followeth, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore let Pharaoh look out, a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint overseers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of plenty. And let them gather all the food of these good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. And the food shall be for a store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath shown you all this, there is none so discreet and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and according unto your word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. And the Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the second chariot, which he had, and they cried before him, Abrek. And he set him over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without you shall no man lift up his hand or his foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphanath-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Joseph went over the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 years of plenty the earth brought forth in heaps. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. The food of the field which was round about every city laid he up in the same. And Joseph laid up corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until they left off numbering, for it was without number. And unto Joseph was born 2 sons before the year of the famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenty that was in the land of Egypt came to an end. And the 7 years of famine began to come, according as Joseph had said. And there was famine in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for the bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he says to you, do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses, and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine was sore in the land of Egypt. And all the countries came into Egypt to Joseph to buy corn, because the famine was sore in all the earth. All right, let's go back up. Verse 1. We are continuing in this story of the period of time when Joseph was in Egypt. Now, in the last chapter, Joseph had interpreted the dreams of the butler and the baker, or the one that tests, you might say, the taste testers of Pharaoh, the chief baker and the chief butler. He had interpreted the dreams, and each one had came to pass just as Joseph had said. Joseph had asked the butler to remember him when he came back before Pharaoh, and we'll find that in the close of the chapter he had forgot him. Of course, we know that it's the Lord that caused us to remember. And that's kind of where we're going to pick it up here a couple years later. Verse 1. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. So, it's 2 full years later, after this period of time when Joseph interpreted these dreams, these visions. 2, we're going to get to witness something, and that's going to here we're going to find out it's the greater understandings. These 2 greater understandings. Twice, because we'll find out it's of God. Pharaoh dreams now. Pharaoh's got a dream. Pharaoh's got a night vision, is what it is, this dream that Pharaoh has. And behold, he stood by the river. A river is always a place where the understanding is coming down. 2, behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, well-favored, fat-fleshed, and they fed in the reed grass. So, behold, there came up out of the river these 7 kine out of that river. That's going to be that. Got some understanding there. These 7 is to complete it, finish it. It's going to be the settled in it, the whole amount of it. These cattle, we're going to find out they're going to represent man in the fact of the way their fatness is. And these years, they're going to represent these years, or these periods of time. At least their stature is, their appearance is. There's well-favored, fat-fleshed, and they fed in the reed grass. The reed grass is, of course, what they would make papyrus out of, and I use that as the symbolism of the written, that which is written. So they're going to be there in that which is recorded. 3, and behold, these 7 other kind came up after them out of the river, ill-favored, lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kind upon the brink of the river. And behold, 7 other cattle came up after them out of the river. These are ill-favored and lean-fleshed. They're poorly and sickly looking. They're not fat and healthy. And they stand by the other kind, and stand by the other cows upon the brink of the river. 4, the ill-favored and the lean-fleshed kind did eat up the 7 well-favored, fat kind. So Pharaoh awoke, and these skinny ones, the ill-favored ones, the poorly ones, and the lean-fleshed cattle did eat up the 7 well-favored, fat cattle. And Pharaoh awakes from his dream. We'll find out these visions of that bother him. 5, and he slept and dreamed a second time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. And he slept. He goes back to sleep. He returns to his rest, you might say, and he dreams a second time and has a second night vision, 2 times. Second, as a portion of time. Even each one of these dreams is going to be a portion of time, you might say. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. These, once again, but we're going to use this corn as that, and what it should be is grain. These 7 ears of grain complete that. These ears are a group of the grain that come up on the stalk, and they're going to represent the same thing the cows do. We have one stalk that's going to be good, 7, and behold, 7 ears thin and blasted, with the east wind sprung up after them. And next, these 7 ears thin and blasted. So they're going to be the unhealthy, withered, all rotted looking. And they spring up after them. The wheat here represents the food. We see that which was fat, and that which was starving. 7, and the thin ears swallowed up the 7 rank and full ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And the thin ears would swallow up the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh, that's the great house, awoke, and behold, it was just a dream. Not a reality, we'll find out, of what's going to happen actually, but just a kind of like a little similitude, a little similarity, a metaphor, so to speak. This dream has to do with reality. 8, and it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called out for all the magicians of Egypt, all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. So it comes to pass in the morning, or as soon as the morning comes, that his spirit was troubled, and that self within bothered him what he had dreamed about these, and not knowing what they meant, he sent and called all the magicians of that. The magician is somebody that can do magic or illusions. They are people of illusions. These ones of Egypt. That's that place of graves. They all the wise men thereof. These are supposed to be all the ones that have the answers. These are going to be all those that do potions and all that manner of stuff that men do. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them. Nobody knew what it meant. Nobody knew what the visions of the night stood for. 9. Then spoke the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I make mention of my faults this day. So now the chief butler's memories come back to him. The butler here is that one that would test this cupbearer who would taste the wine of the Pharaoh. And he says that he's going to make mention of his faults or call to remembrance the day, or that even that understanding where the Pharaoh had put him into the prison. 10. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants and put me in the ward of the house of the captain of the guard, me and the chief baker. And now we're going to go back to that period when the Pharaoh had put him back in about 2 years back. He says when the great house was angry, his servants, him and the captain, him and the chief baker. 11. And we dreamed a dream one night. I and he, we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. He tells Pharaoh that they both had a dream one night, and we remember that was the beginning of that darkness. I and he, and we dreamed according to the interpretation of his dream. Each man, according to understanding, would be to himself. It's what the dream doesn't have maybe to do with everybody else. 12. And there was with us there a young man, a Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And he tells him about this young man that was there, a Hebrew. A Hebrew is somebody from beyond. It's not from Egypt. He was the servant to the captain of the guard, that one that was ruling over the Gardi, or the ones that was over the prison house. And we told him, and he interpreted us our dreams, and he did. We got that in the last chapter. 13. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. I was restored into mine office, and he was hanged. And he told him the way it wound up, and that's what happened. The butler was restored to his office, and the baker was hanged. 14. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself, changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph. Well, remember, Joseph's the one that adds to, going to add to, and they are added to even. And they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, so they went and got him fairly quick. And he shaved himself, and the shaved here is to make himself bald or to shave down. He changes his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. 15. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. I have heard say of you that when you hearest a dream, you canst interpret it. And Pharaoh says unto Joseph, I've dreamed a dream, and nobody knows what it means. Nobody can tell me what it means. And I've heard that you, when you hear a dream, you can tell people what it means. 16. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Joseph, this one it's going to add to, answers Pharaoh, that great house, and tells him it's not in him. He's not the one that does it. God, that's the powers, the strength, the might. It's the force that exists. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. 17. And Pharaoh spoke unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the brink of the river. So Pharaoh was going to begin to tell Joseph about his dream, about that this night vision that he had. Tells him he was on the brink of the river. A brink is a bank, one side or the other. The river is, once again, there's going to be some knowledge coming down, some understanding coming down. And behold, 18, there came up out of the river 7 kinds, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in the reed grass. And he tells him about these seven kind, these fat-fleshed ones, these ones that fed in the reed grass. These cattle, they're a greater cattle that make themselves fat off this reed grass here. And I've interpreted this before as these laws of men. 19, and behold, 7 other kind came up after them, poor and very ill-favored, lean flesh, such as I never saw in the land of Egypt before badness. And behold, these 7 kind came up after them, these poor, ill-favored. They didn't do as well from this as the others had. These were so bad, he had never seen the like of them. These were so bad in the land of Egypt. That's that land of crypts, graves. 20. And the lean and ill-favored kind did eat up the first 7 fat kind. And the bad times consumed the good times. 21. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as the beginning. So I awoke. So he tells him after they got done eating them, they were still just as sickly looking as they was before. And that wakes him up. 22. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up upon one stalk full and good. And he's going to tell me about the second dream, these 7 ears that came up on one stalk. And that's that one is from the beginning. It support that which is going to complete the fulfillment, you might say, of it all. They were full and good, and behold, these 7 ears withered, thin, blasted, with the east wind sprung up after them. And then behold, these 7 ears that are withered, they're thin, they're no good, they're blasted, means to have a mold or a rot or something on them by this east wind. That's that understanding that comes across time right there. That east is always the way of where the sun comes up, enlightenment, you might say. Wind is a period of time. It's kind of blowing across it. These would be the ones that would spring up after them. 24. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. So the good times are gone. The bad times have taken them away. He tells it to the magicians. That's all the ones that supposedly had all the answers. They're all the wise ones of the land. And these that practice sorcery and every manner of that understanding. 25. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. What God is about to do, he has declared unto Pharaoh. So Joseph, that's the one that's going to add to, tells unto Pharaoh, the great house, the dream of Pharaoh is one. That dream is just one. Both are one. Each vision, each dream is just one period together, you might say. There's the good. What God is about to do, he has declared unto Pharaoh. And what the powers that rule, the mighty one of strengths and powers, is about to do, he's told unto the great house. A little foreknowledge, you might say. 26. The 7 good kind are 7 years. The 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. So the cattle and the ears, they are one. They're 7 years. They mean the same thing. These 7 years is going to be to complete the understandings of it. But it's just one. And the 7 lean and ill-favored kind that came up after them are 7 years, and also the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind, they shall be 7 years of famine. And the 7 lean and ill-favored kind, these greater cattle that came up after them, and these are 7 years as well. And also the empty ears blasted with the east wind, those other ones that was rotted and spoiled, they are 7 years of famine, of lack. Both would be meaning the same thing. They are 7 years of famine. 7, it's going to complete the greater understandings of famine, both vision, that which is substance for the flesh. 28, that is the thing which I spoke unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he hath shown unto Pharaoh. And that is the thing which I spoke unto the great house. That's what God's about to do. He has shown unto the great house. They already had great knowledge of it. 29, behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And behold, there's 7 years. These 7, it's going to complete the greater understandings of these great plenty that's throughout all the land of Egypt, that land of graves and snares. 30, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And there shall arise these 7 years of famine, and that's going to be to complete the greater understandings of the famine. Famine here is going to be for the bread, for the substance that nourishes the flesh. We find out that in the old days they would set the showbread. That was the law that began to give you your understanding. Of course, the greater understandings were already known. 31, and the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine which followeth, for it shall be very grievous. But the famine, which is going to follow those years of plenty, that years of enough, it's going to be grievous, that you're not going to remember how good it was. 32, and for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God. God will shortly bring it to pass. And for the dream, that's that vision, that's why it was doubled. That's why the Pharaoh dreamed it twice. That's why the great house are going to have that vision twice. It's doubled twice, 2, witness it. It is doubled. It's because the thing is established by the Almighty himself, and the Almighty will shortly bring it to pass. And we will find out that there is a great loss for the understanding that sustains the flesh. 33, now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Now therefore let the Pharaoh, that's the great house, look out for a man who's discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. That's that land of pits, graves. 34, let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint overseers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of plenty. Let Pharaoh do this, let him appoint overseers, people to watch over the land and keep track of it, and take up a 5th part. A 5th part is a portion of grace. 5 is grace. 5th is a portion of grace of the land of Egypt. And it's going to be a little bit of grace. The Lord's always merciful. And to take up that 5th part is going to, in those 7 years of plenty, we'll find out, it's going to be to keep the understandings of the Lord, keep understandings of Hashem while you can. 35, and let them gather all the food of these good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. And let them gather up the food. They're going to take up all the excess of these good years, these 7 good years that are going to come, and lay up the corn, lay up the grain, we should say, and we'll call it corn, under the hand of Pharaoh for food. And it's going to be for the bread. It's going to be laid up under the works of the great house. The grain, the excess grain that's taken up, and that's the substance, my friend. That's going to nourish the flesh and keep it alive during this period of the famine. And we'll learn that famine is for the word of the Lord in the end time. And the food shall be for a store to the land against the 7 years of famine. And the food shall be for a store, a brace, a support against these 7 years, or these greater understandings of the famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt. And that's the land of crypts, graves, you might say, that the land perish not through the famine. that the land don't perish, that not everybody dies from the famine or the lack of nourishment. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all of his servants. And that pleased Pharaoh, that great house, quite a bit, and even all the perceptions of his servants. They was happy with that answer. 38, and Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? Pharaoh, that's the great house, says unto all those that serve him, Can we find one such as this? And that's to be single, even in his understanding, a man whom the Spirit of God is. That's the strength or the might or the power. 39, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God has shown you all this, there's none so discreet and wise as you. Pharaoh says unto Joseph, that great house, says to Joseph, he's the one that's going to add to, as much as God has shown you all this, there's none so discreet and wise as you. So, because you've seen it, you understand it, you're the one who knows best. 40, you shall be over my house, and according unto your word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than you. You shall be over my house, and that means all that he has. And according unto your word shall all his people be ruled. That's all those of Egypt. That's the place where they are. The graves are those that are dead in the grave. Only in the throne will I be greater than you. And we'll find out. Only in the throne. That's the place where he sits. That's Pharaoh, the one in the great house. This here, to rule over those ones that are in the land of the pit, land of the grave. So Pharaoh is the one that rules over that place, but he has given all that rule to Joseph to take over those that are, you might say, in the crypt or in the grave, that are dead through the act of sin, idolatry mostly. 41, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh says unto Joseph, that's the one he's going to add to, I've set you over that land of the grave. 42, and Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand, and put it on Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. So Pharaoh takes that ring, that signet ring, it might as well have your name on it. The signature ring there, that might as well just have Pharaoh's name instead of Joseph's name on it. Takes it off his hands, that's off his work, and he puts it on Joseph's hand, or into his works. Basically, he makes him the Pharaoh next to him. He arrays him in vestures of fine linen, clothes him, we'll find out, like royalty, and puts a gold chain about his neck. Gold that belongs to God anyway. Gold represents those things that belong to the Lord. These chain are these links. They're linked together and they form a ring, and it goes about the neck. It supports the head, or to show that support of the head, that it's of God. This was symbolism from times past. 43, and he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, Abrak, and he set him over all the land of Egypt. And he makes him to ride in his second chariot. We can witness that chariot. A chariot's a war machine. A chariot's something that goes to battle. And we can witness it's the second one. And they cried before him, Abrak. Abrak means to bow down, bow your knee, bend your knee before him, and set him over all the land of Egypt. That land of Egypt, to bend your knee is to give up your authority. Basically, it means you've bowed yourself. You give your authority to the one you're bowing to. That means your authority. You don't have an authority. He sets him over the land of Egypt. That's that land of graves and snares and pits. That's where you wind up when you violate the laws of the Lord. 44. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without you shall no man lift up his hand or his foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh, that's the great house, says unto Joseph, that's the one it's going to add to. He says, I am Pharaoh, the great house, and without you no man's going to lift up his hand, that's his works, or his foot in all the land of Egypt. His foot is to go anywhere, his goings. He's not going to be able to do anything or go anywhere in the place of graves. We'll find out without Joseph knowing about it. 45. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him to a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. And Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. And the Pharaoh called Joseph's name the great house. That's the one. We're going to get to how Pharaoh got his position. And he called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah. That's this one that has treasury of the rests of these, where the glory rests. The one who treasures over where the glory rests. And he gives him to wife as a reflection of his understanding, Asenath. And Asenath is that which belongs to the goddess of Neith. I get in a lot about these Nata gods or these Nata goddesses of Egypt because they had a whole pantheon of goddesses. Neith was just another one of these pantheons. She was a deity of war, hunting, weaving, and wisdom. Special attention to the weaving. This understanding comes forth from Potiphar, this one who Potiphar means he whom Ra gave, he whom gave given of Ra. Ra was a sun god worshipped for a period of time in Egypt when they were very limited in their understanding of what the sun was. Of course, these were just all deities created by men. He's this priest. A priest is somebody who stands before, has rule over, in charge of the word of. No one speaks for God. God kind of speaks for himself. But here, these are not a god, so he's got to have one that talks for him. On means the strength or vigor. One who has vigorous strength, you might say. Another one of their deities, having many gods in that place of the graves. Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. So Joseph goes to survey the land, you might say. 46. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. So Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before the Pharaoh. This 30 is 3 tenths. We get to witness the law completely here in the overall understanding of it, the greater understandings of this, even of old. 30 means it's dedicated. It's dedicated for a purpose. And that's how old he was when he stood. And that's going to be the age or the determination of the understandings of him. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. So now Joseph goes out from before, being on his own, having all the authority, having authority established where his authority is great in the land. We'll find out that authority was granted by men. 47. In the 7 years of plenty, the earth brought forth heaps, and in these 7 years of plenty, as the time goes by, the earth brings forth heaps. It's just bountiful. And it's going to be to complete the greater understandings, even these heaps. that they gathered up in bounty, 48, and he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, laid it up in the food in the cities and the food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. And Joseph goes around gathering all the substance. These 7 years, these are the ones that's going to complete that understanding of the good times, you might say, which were in the land of Egypt, that land of the graves and snares and pits. He lays it up for food in the cities. That's those places that got a guard. Even the food of the field, he takes it in from around those cities, and he lays it up the same in that same city. 49, and Joseph laid up corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until they left off numbering, for it was without number. And Joseph lays up grain as the sand of the sea, most likely not corn, but he lays up this grain. The grains that which they're going to make the bread from represents that which comes from the earth itself. He lays it up like the sand of sea for the numeration. It's for the number of it very much, until they left off numbering it. There was no number. It had no number. There was no amount known of this grain, of this wheat, of this that was being harvested. 50. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the year of the famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore unto him. And Joseph, that's the one that's going to add to, were born these 2 sons, and we're going to get to witness these 2 masculines that come forth from the one that's going to add to, because they was born before the year. That's the greater understanding of the famine that came. That famine is going to be for the word of the Lord in the end. Whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On, bore unto him. This is going to be this one, Asenath. That's the one who belongs to that, one of the deities of Egypt, and she's the one that belongs to the goddess of Neith. That's the understanding that comes forth from Potipharah, this one whom Ra gave. That's the sun deity. He was the priest of On, that one that had strength and vigor. All of unfamiliar creations of men, these not gods, I call them. These things we see, look at. And Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh, for God made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And Joseph called the name, that's the Shem of this one who would be born first, Manasseh. Why Manasseh? We'll find out, because Manasseh means to forget, and God had made him to forget all his toil, or everything that was before that period. When he was in his father's house, that's the one where he's born from. We'll find out. That's exactly what happens. 52. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the name of the second, that's the Shem. We'll get to witness. Called his name, or his Shem would be Ephraim. Ephraim means to be fruitful, means to be double fruited, having more than one fruit, for he made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. 53. And 7 years of plenty that was in the land of Egypt came to an end. So all the good times, that completes the greater understandings of plenty. All the good times that was in the land of Egypt, that's that place of crypts and graves and snares, they finally come to an end. 54. And the 7 years of famine began to come, according as Joseph has said. And there was famine in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And these 7 years of famine, that's where there's nothing to eat, there's no substance of any kind. He's going to be to complete the greater understandings. That's that second portion that came up afterwards. It begins. It's just like Joseph said, the one it's going to add to. And there was a famine in all the lands. There was a great hunger, and we'll find out it's going to be in all the earth. But in all the land of Egypt, that's that place of graves, snares and traps, we'll find out. There was bread. They had a little something to eat there because they had been forewarned 55, and when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he says to you, do. So now when all the land of Egypt was famished, they were starving to death, the people cried to the great house for bread, for some substance, that substance for the flesh. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, that's those of that place, graves, that's those that are dead, go unto Joseph. Whatever he tells you to do, to do it. 56, and the famine was over all the face of the earth. Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine was sore in the land of Egypt. And the famine, that's that great hunger, was over all the face of the earth. It was made plain unto all flesh. Joseph opened the storehouses. That's the places we'll find out where the excess was stored up for that period of time, and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine was sore in the land of Egypt. And he started selling that which was stored up to the Egyptians, those ones of the grave. And the famine, that great hunger, was sore. It was hard. It was sore, means to be rough on the land of Egypt. That's that place of graves. This famine, we'll find out, is for the word of the Lord. 57, and all the countries came into Egypt to Joseph to buy corn, because the famine was sore on the earth, in all the earth. So all the countries, that's all the other nations round about, people came into Egypt to Joseph to buy this grain, to get their substance, because the famine was sore in all the earth. There was no other place to get it. We're going to pick up in Genesis chapter 42. Turn and return.